hits for the bench. Extra attacker coming on to even things up. To the net, Albertson scores!
The Extra Attackers Podcast with Maude and Jordan.
Hello, hockey fans. Welcome to the first episode of the Extra Attackers Podcast, where Jordan and Maude, your extra attackers, cover the biggest stories around the NHL from coast to coast. Now, you may know me from Game Over Ottawa, and Jordan here has also guested on that show a few times, and we were kind of thinking it would be fun to come up with a show where both of us can just kind of discuss the whole NHL and whatever stories are going on across the whole league, as opposed to just specifically the Ottawa-centric stuff, even though I still have my Ottawa background behind me. But yeah, how are you doing tonight, Jordan?
I'm good. I'm trying to help bring some more diversity by wearing a Winnipeg shirt. Unfortunately, it has Line on it, which is a little bit depressing, but that's okay.
Yeah, at least Winnipeg fans probably still have decent memories of Line. I could be way off base on that, but like at least there were some good seasons with him. It wasn't all bad.
At least it kind of worked itself into the Dubois trade, so I guess I can't be that mad.
Yeah, and I guess we'll discuss this a little later when we get into our standings predictions. But there should be some interesting takes on Winnipeg, considering you bring up the Dubois trade, and there was another Dubois trade this summer, him making his way out of Winnipeg. So that's something that we'll get into here. We've also got the recent moves like Karlsson to Pittsburgh is another thing we're going to be touching on, because basically we're going to be going through the entire NHL standings and just giving our hot takes and predictions on who's going to make the playoffs, how the divisions will shake out, and just thought it would be fun to start off the show like that, and we can just throw our predictions out there so people can either agree, disagree, and completely roast us if we're wrong. And it will also be fun to look back on at the end of the season, you know?
We're gonna have to recap this to see like how off base we were when we're done, but
for sure.
I think it's gonna be interesting. But also, just to clarify, we are Sens fans, so there might be a little Sens bias in
maybe
in some sections, but it's not as bad as Toronto bias, so it can always be worse.
Maybe a little anti-Toronto bias, but
there we go.
You know,
everyone loves that.
It happens. So before we get into that, you want to let the people know where they can find us on social media?
Of course, if you're trying to find me on social media, you can find me on Twitter at Saint of Stutzla, and for Maude, you can find it at Maude's Show on Twitter as well. Also, Extra Attackers has its own Twitter page, just at Extra Attackers. And we'll be posting occasionally, like retweeting other updates about the NHL that happen, or of course, when we're going to be having podcasts and what those topics are. So if you're interested in keeping up in that way, then that's where you can find us.
Awesome. And yeah, super excited to get started here. So what we've done is pulled up a tier list here with all the teams' logos, and we've got our rankings. Instead of going through and kind of just going division by division, we've got the tiers here of division winners, second seed, third seed, and both the wild cards, and then the teams, kind of a tier for the teams that will be just outside the playoffs. We think maybe they could get in, but we're leaning towards they won't, and then the not even close tier at the bottom there. So should be a lot of interesting discussion here. Gonna kick it off going in alphabetical order with the Anaheim Ducks. I guess this one is a little interesting, just a little bit, because they could be in that not even close tier, or they could be in the just outside. What do you think, Jordan?
I think it's tough with Anaheim. I mean, drafting someone like Leo Carlson, I mean, we don't know if he'll play yet, obviously, first season, but that could be big. I still feel like they're probably just leading on the not even close tier. They made some improvements. Obviously, they signed Radko Gudas to too much money, but they did sign him, which will help their bottom four. And it's a good veteran presence. And I mean, we'll see what happens with John Gibson as well. Like, he might get traded before season starts. I feel like it's a little too early to put them in the just outside tier. I think they deserve to be in the not even close, even though I do like their future.
You know, when I was originally doing my standings rankings, I had them a little bit higher, but now that I look closer, especially at their cap-friendly defenseman list, you're right that they really need to go into the not even close tier, because I didn't realize how bad their defense looks at this point. Like, I was thinking that they would have a little bit of a bounce back season because the year before last, they were actually doing surprisingly good in Zegras' rookie year, and they were kind of near the wild card spot before falling off at the end of the year. And I thought,
That's true.
oh, like they added Killorn, they got Troy Terry extended, and Gudas is a good player to add. I thought maybe they'll bounce back up a little bit, but holy crap, this decor. Like Cam Fowler and Radko Gudas is probably your top pairing, which is pretty horrific at this point. Maybe like 6 years ago that could have been okay, but not even as a top pairing. And then Robert Hagg, Colton White, and Jackson McComb. I don't even know who those two guys are. And then Jamie Drysdale, who, if I remember correctly, he was injured for like all of last season, right?
Yeah, he barely played. And I mean, I like his potential, but he's still kind of yet to necessarily prove it at the NHL level. So it's a bit of a question mark.
Yeah, like maybe they'll have some rookies coming up. I don't think Pavel Minuchikov is really ready yet to make an impact. So I think the Ducks will be moving up soon because I really like a lot of the young players that they have. But for now, we have to stick them in the not even close tier for sure.
It is the right decision, even though I do really like the rebuild that they're on, and I think they're doing the right things so far. So, but I have to agree, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Arizona, which is another situation of, do we think they might be able to knock on the playoff door, or are they just still stuck at the bottom?
I don't think so. They're very much still in the for me, like trying to get assets to rebuild sort of tier. You of course have Clayton Keller, who is fantastic. And they did sign Matt Dumba for $4 million, which was I mean, he's not the player he used to be, but I guess it gets a good veteran presence on the back end. And I think throughout their lineup, they kind of improved their depth, but I think they still lack a little bit of that high-end scoring touch. I think a player like Barrett Hayton might come in, might do big things next year, maybe change my mind, but at this point, it's tough to predict off potential like that. So I would have to put them again in the not even close tier.
Yeah, Barrett Hayton was actually surprisingly good in the second half of last year. I actually picked him up off waivers in fantasy a couple times because he was just getting that ice time with Keller and Schmaltz for a bit there in the last couple months of the season, and he was actually putting up some points. So he could be a little bit of a sleeper player to break out for next season if they play that trio together from the start of the year. But yeah, I think it has to be the not even close tier for the Coyotes still, sadly. Again, just because of the defense, similar to Anaheim, because like if Hayton continues to grow and like maybe Genther and Cooley could have some really good rookie seasons, like their offense is going to be great. True. But that defense, it's better since they signed Matt Dumba. Like if we did this recording a few days ago, it would have been looking even more dire without him. But that's not a decor that has any sort of like consistency in as top four players other than Matt Dumba. Just a bunch of guys who some of them have shown potential, but we don't really know like if they can lead a team to the playoffs. It's not happening for Arizona this year, is it?
No, like I think their number one right D, even with Dumba's like Jersey, which isn't the worst in the league. We're gonna go over teams that probably don't have a player as good as Jersey on their defense. But yeah, I feel like there's still work to be done. I don't think they'll finish dead last, but I think that they're still going to be healthily outside the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. I would say they'll probably be above the bottom five. Like I would say their first round pick will probably be in the 5 to 10 range, and I think that's a good improvement for them.
Oh yeah, no, I think they'd be happy with that. And I even forgot about Dylan Gunther, which is like a big thing too. He could be a great first line player, and that'll carry them even farther. So yeah, I think out of bottom 5 is a good prediction.
Yeah. And then the next team, this is where it starts to get spicy, is the Boston Bruins. And we have a little bit of bias here because the Bruins being in the Atlantic Division, if they are to fall down the rankings, that could be an opportunity for the Sens. But do you think the Bruins will make the playoffs next year?
I was thinking about it. I was thinking about it a lot because you lost Krejci, you lost Bergeron. I'm sorry, you haven't officially lost Krejci, but all signs are pointing to him retiring as well. Your first line center will be Pavel Zacha. However, with that being said, they still have a pretty decent forward core. Like Zacha is playing in between presumably Pasternak and Marchand. which is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And their defense, like it's worse without Orlov, but it's still pretty good. Like you have Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy. And you still have, of course, Lunas Olmark as a goaltender who did amazing last year. I don't think he'll do as well this year, but he did fantastic. So I think all of that together pushes them into a playoff spot. I would probably say first or second wild card.
I think for the sake of this tier list, I'm going to agree with you, but when I did my initial rankings before we compared ours together, I did put them outside of the playoffs, although that might be
Ooh,
a little bit of wishful thinking, I have to admit. Like, as you were saying about Zaka and Coyle, I think would be the top two centers for the Bruins.
yeah.
Like, losing Bergeron and Krejci, you lose your top two centers. How can any team still make the playoffs after that, especially with how elite Bergeron is? But Zaka and Coyle are still pretty good is the thing. Like, both of those guys are kind of like second line caliber centers. And like you said, if one of them is playing between Marchand and Pasternak, or even if you split up Marchand and Pasternak and have them on line one, line two, that's pretty good support. So they might be able to withstand some of the lost offense. And but I don't know. The big thing for me is that Olmark was so good last season to such an unreal degree that I don't think he can really keep it up again. Like, I think he will still have a good season, but even like, I can't remember exactly what his final save percentage was, but I'm sure it was like 930 or something like that. Even if he
Ridiculous.
drops to like a 920, which is still pretty good, that's a huge, like, that's an extra goal per game that your team's allowing. So the thing is though, 65 wins. Are they really going to drop like 25 wins and get only 40 and miss the playoffs? Like, how far of a drop will it be?
Honestly, they lost a lot of depth. That's undeniable. But I still like their defense core. I think Allmark will still be good, not as good, but good. And I so like wholeheartedly thought last season Boston was going to be out of the playoffs. That
Yeah.
was going to be the team out of the top like four in the Atlantic to drop, and they bit me hard. They really proved me wrong. So I'm very scared about making another prediction that sees them out.
Yeah, people thought they would fall last year and they didn't. So do we just stick with saying that they're not going to fall? They're never going to fall off, I guess, even without Bergeron. Like, I think you've convinced me that we have to put them in. Do you think second wild card maybe?
I think like between our thinking that's a good compromise.
Yeah.
Because I would maybe lean like somewhat toward first, but I think second wild card is fine. I think that's a decent prediction.
All right. So we'll go with that on Boston, but that's certainly an interesting one where they are one of the biggest like wild card teams, not in terms of like actual standings wild card, but they're a wild card in the NHL in terms of like the Atlantic Division. They could be first, they could be sixth. I have no clue.
Exactly.
Neither of those results would surprise me. So very interesting with Boston. And then sticking in the Atlantic Division with Buffalo up next, this should be another interesting one. Do you think Buffalo can pull it off and make the playoffs?
This one was really hard for me because I think in my rankings I left Buffalo out. Um, my line of thinking, their defense is really good. Having Rasmus Dahlin and Power, fantastic, amazing. That's like the deepest two right-handed defensemen in the league, arguably. I had an impression of Buffalo when the season ended that their fourth core was elite, and when you look at it, there are elite players. But after I looked at it after the season and knowing like the additions they've made, I just felt like it wasn't good enough to compete with the rest of the Atlantic. Like I think that they acquired Tyson Jost last season. He's in their bottom six. But throughout like this free agency period, they haven't really done too much that's been notable besides shoring up some depth. Um, and when you look at their top six, they could use like one more good top six forward to really complete that roster. And obviously, like I love Tage Thompson. I think he's great. But I do think also goaltending is going to be a question mark. Is there? I forget the prospect goalie's name off the top of my head, but is he going to be like as good as he was to finish off the season? Because he did very well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to say. I think I would say they're just outside, but I want to hear what you think.
I I think they could make it, but the goaltending, as you said, Devin Levi, that's a lot of pressure on the kid to come in and just carry the team for the whole season because I don't believe in Eric Comrie and I don't really believe in Luukkonen too much. Like he's a guy who still has a little bit of potential, but if you have Luukkonen and Levi as your tandem, that's like a really young goalie tandem that I don't know if they would just be up to par. I think I think almost every team in the Atlantic, except for maybe Montreal, has better goaltending than Buffalo, and I think that's going to be kind of the Achilles heel. Even though I'm not discounting Devin Levi, I think he will probably have a good season, but I don't think he will be great enough to get them into the playoffs, especially since, like you said, the Sabres didn't do too much in the offseason to improve. Like, they got Connor Clifton and Eric Johnson on defense for a little bit of depth. Like, that's okay, but
all right.
But I don't see much else that's improved on their roster. And like you mentioned, maybe they need another top six forward. Could be Peyton Krebs, could be JJ Peterka, could be
That's
Jack
true.
Quinn. Maybe one of those players pops off and gives them that extra top six forward. But I don't know. I feel like I kind of see them all as like third liners for this upcoming season. Maybe play the three of them together. That could be a pretty sick third liner. But I don't know. I think the goaltending is what's going to stop them from getting into the playoffs overall. And just the lack of like a big addition, like you said, is just... I can't really say that they improved that much on paper. You need guys that are already on their team to improve way more than expected, I think.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that assessment. I think it's certainly possible, but even just thinking about like Ottawa, who picked up Tarasenko, right? Like that greatly infused the team with like a new veteran presence that should help in a playoff run. And I don't really see that on Buffalo. Like getting Kyle Okposo back is great, but he's not going to be in your top six. It's something where I'm just a little unsure at this point.
Hey, they did add Stanley Cup championship winner Eric Johnson, so
That's on me for forgetting that one. I changed my mind.
yeah, he will take them to the playoffs. No, Buffalo's going to the just outside tier, and to be fair, I think it will be really close. I think they will be within like either 2 points in or 2 points out. It's going to be like right on the fringe for them.
I feel like that too. I like honestly, you could discuss everything that we've discussed and say that they're second wild card or even first wild card, and I'd be like, yeah, I don't think you're crazy. I could see it.
Yeah, exactly. And since I was a little bit split on the Bruins. If you slide the Bruins out a little bit, Buffalo sneaks right in there and takes their spot. So
That's true.
it's entirely possible that the Sabres do make the playoffs, but for the sake of this prediction, we're going with them just barely missing. And then that leads us to the Calgary Flames, which is a team that just barely missed last season. And it's another team where I look at them and it's like, they didn't really do anything all offseason, and I'm surprised because there was all those rumors of their players wanting out, and other than Tyler Toffoli, they're all still there. So what the hell's going on in Calgary?
Calgary is a really, really weird situation because I feel like last season, Brad Treliving did everything he could. Like he fought tooth and nail to keep that team relevant with Matthew Tkachuk wanting to leave, which is a huge loss. As we could see now, as we could see now in the aftermath of the Stanley Cup Finals, like he's a unicorn player, super hard to replace that. But he got Huberdeau and Weegar, great additions, and they didn't work out well last year. I think a lot of that was probably the coaching of Daryl Sutter. I won't lie. But you lose Tyler Toffoli. You have a bunch of other players that have reported that they've wanted out, including Noah Hannafin, Lindholm, and I think there was one more too, besides Toffoli. But are they going to play like they want to be there? I guess is the question.
Yeah.
If they stay, and if you trade them, you don't have them. What are you going to do? So I kind of feel like this is unfortunate as it is, maybe the beginning of the end for Calgary or the start of an aggressive retool. I think that's what we'll see.
So if you had to pick one way or the other, are they in or are they out?
That is tough. I would say that they're just outside.
Ooh.
I don't have enough confidence in what they have to put them there. I feel like they can make a run, and I feel like they could surprise, but I just don't think the way that things have been going, I don't know if I trust the culture in the room at this point to carry them very far. What about you, Maud?
I think that's a fair assessment, but I'm a little bit more of an optimist on Calgary. I think with Daryl Sutter out of there, you want to talk about the culture in the room, he's gone. And surely all these guys have to be like having like a weight off their shoulders, you know? They have to feel that way. I think that Jonathan Huberdeau is a much better player than he showed last season, and same with Mackenzie Weegar. Like, both of them were still good other than the point production, and getting rid of Daryl Sutter should pretty much fix that as long as the new coach is able to let them play to their strengths. So I think both of them should have pretty good bounce-back seasons. Like, maybe Huberdeau isn't going to be like a 100-point guy anymore, but he should be back to like about point per game. And I still really like a lot of their roster on paper. Like, you are correct, though, that if it could be the beginning of the end, because Lindholm on an expiring deal, as well as Backlund and Hanifin, and Tanev, holy crap,
Yeah.
if they're not good, it's going to be like a scorched earth rebuild, I'm pretty sure. But I think that they're going to have a good enough season that they could sneak into the second wild card, and that's what I put for my initial prediction. So we have a little bit of a disagreement here. We'll have to decide where we put them in the tier list, in or out.
Yeah, this is interesting because I think I put them a couple spots out too.
Oh,
like
wow.
one or two.
You had
behind.
other teams ahead of them?
I had other teams ahead of them. I will say though, the Daryl Sutter effect, him being gone, I think will bring about a lot of positive change. I could definitely see that. And I was reminded, I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure I saw that Daryl Sutter forced Huberdeau to play like his off wing
God.
our position he wasn't comfortable with during the season when things were going well, which obviously didn't fix things. So I think you're right. Like with a new coach, there might be a bounce back system. So even though I think I still have them just outside, I feel like second wild card isn't too bad of a compromise for that team, especially since I think that division isn't especially competitive in a lot of ways. So they could sneak in.
Yeah, so you think you'll give it to me and let me put them at second wild card?
Yeah, I'll give it to you. Even if you're wrong, I'll give it to you. I'm just kidding.
I think I'm buying a little bit of Calgary stock this season. I think it's not going to go totally off the rails for them unless there's something ridiculous like Elias Lindholm getting traded before the season, because at that point they would just be completely screwed. But as of recording right now, he's staying, and if he stays into the season, like I think this is a potential bounce back team to get back into the playoffs. I still like their roster on paper. It's just the uncertainty of those UFAs who may decide that they don't want to stay. But for now, I think they could make the second wild card.
Yeah, that's really fair. That's where I'll put them.
So then next up, this is our first very easy one, the Carolina Hurricanes. And basically the question is going to be, do you have them winning the division or do you have them second?
I had them second.
Okay.
Mostly because I thought New Jersey had a very good offseason.
Yeah.
And also, there's kind of the feeling for me that they've been so good for so long, you're just waiting for them to take like a little bit of a misstep. I don't think that misstep is missing the playoffs, but I do wonder if this will be the season where they kind of get pushed out of that division winner role at this point. So I'm inclined to say second seed just because I think New Jersey had a hell of a good offseason and I love their trajectory, but I admit it's close.
Yeah, I actually agree completely. I have them at the second seed, just because, like you said, I'm all in on New Jersey, and also it's a good point that you raised that they've kind of been, like, I'd have to check the standings history to know for sure, but I'm pretty sure they've basically been first place in the division for like 4 straight years now. It's like, they're probably going to hit the point where after like continuing to kind of disappoint in the playoffs, they're going to have like sort of a middling regular season, you know, and then eventually they'll have that amazing playoff run following an average season, you know, and win the cup. But I'd put them second for this year too.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense with New Jersey's resurgence. So second feels incredibly fair to me.
And then another question of, do you have them first or second in the division, is Colorado.
Colorado, that's an interesting one. I think I actually had them second as well. I'm trying to remember the team that I had leapfrog them. Are they in the same division as Dallas?
Yes.
I had Dallas first. Yeah, I was pretty sure they're in the same division. So yeah, I think Dallas had a really good offseason. I think their core is fantastic. Um, Freaking Jason Robertson, Oettinger, Wyatt Johnson, young player. Pavelski is still there. Jamie Benn and even Tyler Seguin. Not as much Tyler Seguin, but I know Jamie Benn had a great bounce back year. Um, so I feel like, and Haskainen, I can't believe I almost forgot him. They have a fantastic core, and I feel like that'll propel them to the top, which makes me a little bit more inclined to say, okay, you've been good for a while, Colorado. You can take a step back to second seed.
Okay, so we might as well knock out two birds with one stone here with Colorado and Dallas. We'll rank them both at the same time here because
That makes sense.
we're in agreement that they are the top two seeds. I was thinking I would have Colorado at the first seed in the division just because they had so many bad injuries last season that they were just completely decimated. I couldn't believe it. And
true.
Somehow they still managed to be like a 100-point team. And I just got to think that if they have better injury luck this year, that they'll just be back to being their elite selves. Like the roster is basically the same other than like some depth players shuffled around like Ryan Johansson, Ross Colton, Miles Wood being added. I like all of those additions, although the 7-year contract for Miles Wood is absolutely bizarre.
That was insane.
Yeah,
They did that.
I don't know what they were doing with that one, but like those guys, who are they replacing? Like they replaced Alex Newhook, he wasn't really moving the needle in their team, even when they were decimated by injuries. It's not like he took off with the extra ice time.
I know this was the case last year, but isn't Landeskog not playing at all again this season?
Yeah, he's still not playing again.
I feel like that's hard to replace. Like he's their captain and a power forward, which is a premium position in this league. I feel like that's one thing that also knocked them down a spot for me.
And I guess in terms of Dallas's offseason, like they added Duchesne and Dadonov, which is cool. I would probably take those two guys ahead of like Johansson and Colton.
Yeah, I would too. I think
which
the
is
Duchesne
fair.
contract was amazing.
Yeah,
I thought
what
that
a
was great
steal.
value.
Absolute steal. He's gonna score like 70 points and then get a bigger cap hit next year. I'm pretty sure because he'll be all over their like first power play unit. I'm sure. You know what? This is gonna be super close, but I think I'll concede to you and I'll put Dallas as a division winner and Colorado as that second seed. But I think, just as it was last year, I think it's going to be incredibly close. Like, it's going to be like a 1-point difference or something like that.
Oh, I agree completely. I'm fully set up to be wrong when the season actually finishes, and it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever that it's neck and neck.
Yep. And then a little bit of an interesting one for me here. The Columbus Blue Jackets are up next, and they are my second team behind Ottawa. So you would think I would be a little bit biased here, but other than like Adam Fantilli, I'm not very excited for their upcoming season. I literally just want to watch Fantilli, playing with Gaudreau and Laine, and then that's all I care about. Like, other than that, I don't expect anything out of this team, and I'm expecting that you don't either.
I'm not expecting much, no. The only thing I'm expecting, I don't think they're going to be the worst team in hockey. I would be very surprised. And I like their trajectory at this point. Even players like Kent Johnson, he's a great prospect. You hope Cole Sillinger can have a bounce back season after a sophomore slump. So I do like a lot of the team and a lot of the depth, a lot of the prospects, but yeah, I'm kind of in accordance that I don't think they're going to make a ton of noise besides not being last.
Yeah, like their defense is definitely better in adding Severson and Provorov, but it's not a playoff team's defense whatsoever, and their forward core is still kind of like Gaudreau and Laine at the top, and then a bunch of guys who could do well or they could not, like just mostly young guys who they might score 50 points, they might only score 20. Like you had Cole Sillinger, who had a great rookie season and then an awful sophomore year. So it's a bunch of just shots in the dark with their forward core. Maybe some of them will grow and be successful, maybe some of them won't. And then like the goaltending as well, they really need Elvis to get back into form. I know it's been a tough last couple of years for him, mental health wise, but it's also just been tough for him on the ice too. So if he's not bouncing back, you have Daniil Tarasov, who's a decent prospect, but not a tandem that you look at and say this team is going to get anywhere near the playoffs. So unfortunately, even though I like Columbus, they're going into the not even close tier.
Yeah, I'll have to put them there as well. I think it also hurts a lot that they lost Corpusalo, who actually put up decent numbers there, despite how shitty the team was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'll also impact it.
It made sense for them to get assets for him, and it was a good trade if I remember correctly. They got a first round pick, but then I think they flipped it for Provorov. So in the end, kind of just
It's kind of ick,
kind of gross. But yeah, I think Columbus will be better than last year, but I don't think they're going to be like anywhere within like 5 to 10 points of the playoffs. Like I'd expect that they'd improve by about like 10 points or something, but I don't think that would put them close enough to have them in the just outside tier. Like they'll be clearly out of it by like February or March.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
And then another obvious one, the Chicago Blackhawks are going straight into the not even close tier because, I mean, really, what can we say other than Connor Bedard? What the hell is going on with that roster?
I mean, they did pay Corey Perry $4 million for a year, so who knows? Maybe he'll go off this year after being on fourth lines for the last 5 years.
Yeah, it would be really funny if Bedard was just playing with Nick Foligno and Corey Perry as his line mates.
At least he has Taylor Hall. They have to play Bedard with Taylor Hall.
Yeah.
It'd be embarrassing otherwise.
Like, Connor Bedard probably will have like a 60 to 70 point rookie season, and then maybe Taylor Hall's production will go up a little bit playing with him, but like who the hell would even be the right winger on that line? Like Athanasiou or something like that, or Tyler Johnson.
Maybe.
Like it's pretty dire. So like, and then you got Lucas Reichel, who's pretty good, but I think he's a center. It's just young, inexperienced team, or not even like, okay, not a young team, but like a couple guys are young who are their top prospects, and then like a bunch of bums basically to fill out the roster. So it's like very obviously another tank year for Chicago, unless Connor Bedard just is 100 points right off the bat, and then even then they still wouldn't make the playoffs.
Exactly, and like their defense is also not great. Like they have Seth Jones, who's paid way too much. And honestly, I can barely remember any of their other defenders after that. It's kind of dire.
Yeah, honestly, I have no clue either, and it's probably so dire that I don't think I should even bother looking. I feel like that would be a waste of time.
I'll quickly check just to make sure I'm not too insulting to
Yeah.
Chicago fans.
Oh god, maybe there's someone we're forgetting, but
They have good defensive prospects.
Mm-hmm.
Like the guy that they got for the DeBrincat pick is looking pretty good. So
oh dude,
that's
how could we forget Zaitsev?
oh my god, I don't know how I forgot him. I changed my mind.
All right, Chicago division winners
right now.
There we go.
Okay, Connor Murphy isn't bad. He's
Yeah,
okay.
I like him, but
Every other player besides Jared Tenorti, who I mean, he's not really going to move a needle. I've never heard of before. Philip Roos, Wyatt Kaiser, and Isaac Phillips.
I don't. Man, I play too much of the like NHL GM modes, and I still don't know who these guys are. Like, I know a bunch of random ass players and like prospects who are like fringe. Don't even know these guys. Haven't even seen them before. Like, that actually shocked me. I thought that I would have at least known one of those names, but no.
Literally AI generated players right there.
Yep.
But
exactly.
yeah, not even close straight away.
Yep. And then on to Detroit, which should be another interesting hot take for the Atlantic Division. But although I don't know how too hot of a take it will be for us, because I think we're both just saying that they're not making it.
Yeah, I got them. I feel like just outside is probably a good place for them. Honestly, if we had another tier in between just outside and not even close that just said like middle of the pack or something, I'd probably put them there.
That makes sense.
I feel like they did make some decent offseason moves. I think they shored up their forward depth. They did sign Justin Hall for 3 years, which was a choice after seeing him play on Toronto. I still think besides Mo Seider, that defense is a little... Yeah, like besides Mo Seider and Wallman, that defense is just a little... Ugh. And I don't feel like they really fixed any of their goalie problems, which were a big deal last year. And I feel like they're really missing a really good first line center. I think Dylan Larkin is a fantastic 1B.
Mm-hmm.
He's not like a playoff team necessarily, unless you have insane depth. He's not really a playoff team first line center, and I think that forward depth is just going to kill them.
Yeah, like, it's weird because I would almost say that they have good forward depth just because they have a bunch of guys. But the thing is, they don't have those top end guys who push the depth guys down. It's like JT Compher or Andrew Kopp is your second line center. And if you're a playoff team, you want those guys to be like third liners, right? And
Exactly.
like 35-year-old David Perron is probably on your first line. That's not gonna cut it. And like Daniel Sprong will probably be in the top 6, and like that could be okay, or it could just not work because he was just kind of a depth goal scorer for Seattle last year. Even though he's a good player, I would have liked to see the Sens pick him up, but I don't think that's a guy you rely upon in your top 6, basically.
Yeah.
So it's and then you have like Robbie Fabry, Klim Kostin. It's just some guys. I guess Lucas Raymond would be ahead of David Perron on that right wing depth chart. But the thing is, if you put DeBrincat, Larkin, Raymond, that's a pretty good first line. But then your second line is looking pretty pedestrian if you don't either put DeBrincat or Raymond, like if you don't split them up, right? So they just don't have the top end talent ready on forwards, I think, even though they did add DeBrincat, which is a plus. And then that defense is just a joke, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
past Seider and Wallman, what the hell is Yzerman doing with Sherratt and Hall and then Gostisbehere and Olli Mata? Like, why any of them? Why?
I don't think they really did enough for their D. And as well, Lucas Raymond had a pretty bad, like not awful, but he had like a pretty decent sophomore slump last season.
Mm-hmm.
That contributes into this season. And I like some of their depth prospects, like Jonathan Bregan. I think he's going to be pretty good. I like him. But I don't know. You need too much to go right for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. Like we know Shane Gostisbehere can put up points. He'll probably be all on their power play unit, but at even strength, I'm not a fan of him. I'm not expecting that to be a guy that you want to be playing 20 minutes a night for like a team hoping to make the playoffs. So like basically that decor needs to be saved by Edvinsson coming up, and he'll probably play some games this year. But they got so many guys in front of him, like all these guys I just listed, that it's like, is he going to play that many games unless there's a bunch of injuries? Like, I don't know.
Wondering.
Is the coach going to scratch Sherratt and Gostisbehere or Wallman or Olli Mata? Those are all lefty, and I think Edvinsson is a lefty as well. Like, I don't know, unless Edvinsson is just amazing right off the gate and makes their defense way better. Like, I think it's going to take another year for him to be an impact player. So
I would agree.
Not looking great for Detroit. So we're going to have to leave them in the just outside tier.
Yeah,
and then
I agree with that.
pretty easy one coming up: Edmonton Oilers. Question is, do you think they win the division?
I don't.
Oh.
I don't think I had them winning the division. I really like I really like their team. I think there could easily be a second seed, a third seed, like in that range. I am just tired of the constant underachieving that Edmonton does every single year. If they go out and ball out, win the division, I'll be so happy. I'll be ecstatic that they actually did it. But every year I'm hearing about, oh yeah, they shored up their depth. They got like better defensive players. And then they just like don't do as well as you expect. Like they just underperform consistently. And even last year, which wasn't bad, I felt like they still didn't do as well as people thought. I do really like Ekholm. I think that addition, the fact that he has term, that's fantastic. I think that helps out their team a lot. I think like even contracts for Evander Kane, that's going to work out really well, I think. I just can't see them with my past hangups. I can't see them being the division winner.
Oh, see, I want to put them as the division winner just because I think a full season of Ekholm is going to be huge for this team. And you gotta think that Jack Campbell will be a little bit better than last year, like at least, right? Like surely he'll be at least playable as like a backup.
You would hope.
I would think so. I think both of those two things should help the Oilers, unless of course Campbell is just about the same, and then that's not going to be a recipe for winning the division. Other than that, the team is mostly the same, other than the addition of Connor Brown, which I like.
That is a good addition.
Don't know if he'll play in their top 6 or if he'll be in the bottom 6, but either way, he can play in either one. So I like that. But the thing is, I'm assuming you had Vegas as the number 1, right?
Yes, I did.
I don't know, like, in my heart, I want to put Edmonton as the division winners, but I don't know how I can argue against Vegas. That's the thing. Like, they just won the cup, and they dunked on the Oilers in the playoffs. So, like, how am I going to sit here and argue that the Oilers should win the division instead? Like, I don't know. I feel like I might just have to give it to Vegas instead.
Yeah, no, that was my line of thinking too, and I also think that Vegas didn't get a lot worse, so I feel like it's going to be hard for Edmonton to get over that.
Yeah, Vegas is basically the same team. Like, who did they lose?
I'm trying to think because they even signed like Barbashev.
Yeah,
Aiden Hill was
they were
signed.
able to keep Barbashev and Aiden Hill.
Riley Smith. They had to trade away
Yeah,
Riley Smith, which
is gone.
does hurt a little. He would be really good depth. I don't know. I still think it's hard to dunk too much on Vegas. I have them winning. I feel like this is a good opportunity again to just do a double. Easy division winners there, I think, and maybe we put Edmonton in second seed.
I'm gonna do exactly that. Like, I want to say Edmonton is first because I still feel like they're this type of team that can just do very well in the regular season and then they will probably fuck up in the playoffs. But how am I gonna put them ahead of the Stanley Cup winners who beat them last year? So I think we have to give it to Vegas then.
Yep, I think that's reasonable.
Yep, and then the Florida Panthers are a weird one because the other team from the Stanley Cup final, but it's not quite like Vegas where the team looks exactly the same to start the season.
No, I think you have big injuries to Ekblad and Montour. I don't think they're starting the season. And without those two players, that defense is it's Gustav Forsling.
Yeah, just him. Only
just him. There's probably someone I'm forgetting that's notable. But I feel like as well, Florida was another team that didn't have a great offseason. They did sign OEL. I don't hate that. I think that's a good move for some depth.
Yeah, $2 million. That's good.
They just feel so much to me like 2021 Montreal Canadiens, a team that goes really far, but that lack of depth exposes them in the next season.
Mm-hmm.
I think Matthew Tkachuk is fantastic. I think he might carry them into a playoff spot, but I'm like I think just outside. I'm going to be honest.
I think mentioning the 2021 Montreal Canadiens is a little bit harsh just because I think the top end players on this team are all better than the guys who are on that Montreal team.
That is true.
But I do agree that just because of those injuries to Ekblad and Montour, if they can't come back like by November and be their best selves, Florida's going to miss. It's just going to be a slow start for them. And also, do we really believe that Bobrovsky is going to play like he did in the playoffs all season?
I really don't. It's too small of a sample size compared to what he's done for the majority of that contract.
Mm-hmm. I really liked watching the Panthers playoff run, but I can't say that they're going to do it again. And they just squeaked in this year and got on a heater. I think they will, like, once Ekblad and Montour are back, they will be good for most of the season, but I'm expecting a slow start and for them to finish a couple points outside the playoffs, I think.
Yeah, I'm all for that, so just outside.
Mm-hmm. And now the LA Kings, I feel like this should be a pretty easy one. That's like third seed in the Pacific, right?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think that's where I put them. At least I put them around there. I think getting Pierre-Luc Dubois, even though I think he's paid too much, is a good addition. Shores up their depth. Kopitar is going to be there too, so that's a pretty nice center core, even if Kopitar's old. You still have Drew Doughty on the back end. You have a lot of other good defenders. Kevin Fiala is really good. The only question mark I have is goaltending. They signed Cam Talbot, which he was on the Sens last season. Little scary. He would have games where he was fantastic, and he would have games where it was entirely his fault that we lost.
Yep.
So that makes me a bit hesitant, but I don't know. I feel like the rest of their team can more than make up for that if that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing, is over the last couple seasons, the Kings have been good despite having shitty goaltending. Like, Jonathan Quick hasn't been good for 5 years, and they still made the playoffs with him both the last 2 years.
That's true.
And I don't even... Oh, yeah, Cal Peterson was the other goalie. He's just, like, banished to the Netherrealm. So somehow they were still in a playoff spot before acquiring Korpisalo, despite starting the season with those two guys as their goalies. And, like, Phoenix Copley came in and did a little bit for them. I think that if just Copley and Talbot can be a tandem that gets like 905 goaltending, this team is good enough and good enough defensively, coached well enough that this is still a playoff team.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think that third seed is the perfect place for them.
And like, other than the goaltending, the big question mark for me is Quinton Byfield.
I forgot I was going to mention that. Yeah.
Which is basically just the question of will he break out this season. But the thing is, even if he doesn't break out this season, this is still a really good team. So maybe Quinton Byfield breaks out and it has like a 60, 70 point season. Maybe they could move up to like second seed in the division. But even if he doesn't, this is still an easy playoff team in my mind.
Oh, yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And I mean, Quinton Byfield had 4 points in 6 playoff games to end the season. His second half was a lot better than his first. He was on the upswing. So we'll see where he goes with that. And if he comes up big, I feel like that just makes them even more dangerous in that division.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and there is also Brant Clark coming up on defense. That'll be an interesting rookie to watch.
Oh, yeah, no, that's true. No, Brant Clark is pretty good. Like, I like what I've seen from him, so that's a great right D infusion right there.
Yeah, maybe the successor to Drew Doughty. I like that he'll be able to play a couple seasons with Doughty still on the team and can learn from him, and he's probably going to be the guy to take over in that right D spot.
That's true. That's a good point. So they're set up nicely.
From there, we have Minnesota, and I don't remember. Did you put them in the playoffs in your rankings?
I did. I did have them in the playoffs.
Okay, I did too.
I feel like Minnesota has kind of finally gone past that barrier of mediocrity with a lot of good signings, good picks. I like Eriksson Ek. I like Kaprizov. And their defense is pretty decent as well, like with some younger players. Like I think Addison did all right last year. And of course, can't forget Philip Gustafsson, who came in and did fantastic in his first season. And I feel like with Fleury getting another year older, Gustafsson only serves to get more games, which I think only helps them if he continues to perform. So yeah, I had them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. They're kind of in a bit of a holding pattern with the buyout penalties of Suter and Parise coming into effect. That's $7.3 million cap hit for this year and next. But despite that, they did a pretty good job of maintaining like about the same team. And so if they can just hold on for another 2 more years, and then the cap will go up, and that cap hit, that cap penalty will be gone around the same time that the cap goes up. It's a bright future for Minnesota to just add a ton of salary like in 2 years from now, and then they could be a real contender at that point, I think. And for now, I think I would have them as the 3rd seed, eh?
Yeah, I would agree with that at this point. They have a lot of like good roster players that have been there for a while, and a lot of good prospect players. Like Matt Boley came out, did really well last season, and you have Jared Spurgeon, who's their captain, who I think is very underrated. So I think 3rd seed is perfect.
And then from there, Montreal, I'm just putting them in not even close right away.
Really? That's a hot take.
The huge hot take right here. This is the one that everyone was waiting for, right?
This is the one that'll make us go angry viral.
Yeah. The team that is somehow still directly at the NHL salary cap, despite being complete ass. It's really impressive, to be honest. So I think it's going to be another write-off year in Montreal. Hopefully, Cole Caulfield can stay healthy and score 40 goals, but that's about all you have to look forward to.
Pretty much.
Maybe Slavkovsky as well. Maybe he will bounce back. He did have an injury as well. I should give some credit to him.
Yeah, I mean, I do think he was kind of poor in the NHL last year, but I mean, first season, like, given the benefit of the doubt, come back stronger next season, see what he can do. I will say, though, and this might be a little bit of a bold take, I think Nick Suzuki is good. Don't think he's future first-line center material.
But he's already a first-line center.
Oh, sorry.
On the Habs.
Yeah. I forgot. Philip Deneau is our Austin Matthews. Yeah. Yeah, like, I think he's a great 1B. Like, if you had him on a second line, fantastic. Like, your team is set. I don't think he's a first liner. I think he's a good 60, 70 point player. That is a first liner. I should say elite first liner. I think that's one thing that's kind of holding them back.
Kind of in that same tier as Dylan Larkin, right?
Exactly. Kind of in that same tier. He still has more room to grow. So, I mean, admittedly, next season, maybe everything connects. He plays with Caulfield, and and Slavkovsky maybe bounces back, and it's a really good season for him. But I feel like there's still pretty big holes on that team. And, yeah, the depth on forward and defense, not great. not great. As much as Habs fans love Wi-Fi, he is pretty garbage, like absolutely terrible defender. So, I
Oh,
mean, like great to have that physicality, but he can barely defend if you look at his advanced analytics. So, I do wonder where that's going to end up.
yeah, like I guess it would be interesting to see if Reinbacher plays as a rookie. I don't know.
That's true.
They do have him signed to an ELC now, so maybe he'll step in and be decent. But like, yeah, I think it's just gonna be another season of watching the young prospects get some games for the Montreal fans, and I think they'll have a fun time watching those young guys. But it's not gonna translate to any wins in the standings yet.
Exactly. It kind of reminds me when Ottawa was still bad, but picked players like Stutzla, and you were happy to watch them even if the team was losing.
Yeah,
So I feel like in that way it'll be good. Montreal fans will be entertained at the very least. This isn't just a depressing like old guys team that's not going to go anywhere.
yeah. It's not like Chicago's roster is, other than Bedard. They got a little bit more.
Exactly, I would agree.
So I wouldn't say that they'll be like last in the league, but definitely last in the Atlantic. And then from there, kind of a weird team is Nashville. They're rebuilding, maybe or maybe
Sort
not.
of.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know how to describe the direction of this team.
That's a tough one. I think I had them just outside, like literally the place after the second wildcard seed, just because I do think that they traded away like Ekholm is a big loss on that decor. Um, I don't think they made a ton of like fantastic like propping up signings. I think Rylan O'Reilly is great. Is he gonna be your first line center though? Is he still that?
Yeah,
That's
he's not
that's
a
the
1C
question.
anymore.
Yeah, and you like they did pay too much money for Luke Shen. I feel like that's a little undeniable, and I think like he could do well there. I think they're just out of it. I do like what Barry Trotz is doing, though. I think this is a rebuild, or a retool, I should say,
Retooling, yeah.
that could end up being profitable in the future. But I think this is the year where the retooling process is going to be operating throughout.
Yeah, like, here's the thing. O'Reilly isn't a first-line center anymore. He's a good pickup to be, like, the second guy. But then your first-line center is, Tommy Novak, who he was very good for the Predators last season. Let me see what it was. It was 43 points in 51 games. And this is a guy that most people don't even know his name. But he was great for them down the stretch last year. But is he going to be, like, the guy for the team as the first liner the whole season? Like, because he still was behind Duchesne and Johansson on the depth chart technically last season. Not sure exactly how the coach divided up the ice time, but it's a bunch of young guys on the forward group, like Novak, Glass, Tomasino, Parsonen, and Evangelista. Like, this is again, I think I said this about one of the other teams earlier. I think I said about Columbus. This is a bunch of guys who could put up 50 points, or they could just be fourth liners and depth forwards. So this team might have a lot of trouble scoring goals. It's hard for me to say.
Yeah, no, like a lot of the prospects that are coming up, especially in the forward core, are intriguing. But I do agree, it's a little bit like will they, won't they sort of situation. And I think just that little bit might hold them back.
Yeah, and like I have to say, I do really like their defense. You still have Yossi, McDonough, Barry, Shen. I really like Carrier and Fabro as some lesser-known defensemen, and then Jeremy
Sure.
Lauzon. And then you have an elite goalie in Saros. So I do think that pushes them into being in the just outside tier. Maybe a little bit farther away, though, like 5 to 10 points out of the playoffs, kind of like we were saying for Detroit.
Yeah, I think they're kind of in that range. But I could very easily see young players coming in, the system clicking, and them grabbing a wild card or maybe higher. So that's like, oh, we'll see. We'll see.
They'll be in the mix for sure. And then slam dunk right here, New Jersey Devils are going straight to the division winners tier.
Yes, we already talked about them a little bit, but I think acquiring Tino Meyer and signing him and Jesper Bratt was fantastic. That really solidified their forward core. I think their goaltending, Schmid is like, he showed promise. I think he could be good, giving more of the ropes over the course of the season. Their defense is good. Their forward depth is good. It's really just an up and coming team. And I mean, Jack Hughes, I mean, it's hard not to rave about him at this point. So I'm really, really intrigued to see what they do. And I think it's their position to lose at the top of the division.
I think they might win the President's Trophy. and they also might win the cup.
Ooh.
The only thing for me is the goaltending. Vanacek and Schmid are both good, but can one of them be the guy to carry them through a whole playoff run? Don't know yet. I think, and we'll get into this a little bit later when we talk about Winnipeg, but I do wonder if Winnipeg is not going to be in the playoffs, do you trade for Connor Hellebuck at the deadline maybe for the New Jersey Devils?
That's interesting. That there has been talks about that. I think that would be a great deadline pickup, and I wouldn't be surprised.
If you put Hellebuck on this team, they win the cup easily. Okay, we are back. My camera died, so had to switch over to the webcam, but we will continue right where we left off. We had the New Jersey Devils as the division winners. From there, do you think the Islanders will make the playoffs? This is a tricky one for me.
It's tricky. I really don't.
Yeah.
I feel like there are really good players on the Islanders. I love Dobson. I love Barzal. I think Horvat will do better than how he finished the year there. But their team just doesn't have any like top tier star power.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all like middling players who are good, but they're not great. And I feel like not having like a Barry Trotz to kind of make up that difference kind of puts them back down to the just outside range. I think they're a good team, but I think there are better teams in that division.
Yeah, like they add Bo Horvat, so that'll be good for having him for a whole season, but also like Josh Bailey, he wasn't good last season, but he was a top 6 forward on this team. He's done now. And then like Kyle Palmieri, he's not really a top 6 forward anymore. It's just looking weak on offense. They don't really have any young guys who I think are super ready to be impact players yet. Like there's a couple forward prospects they have, but they're not like star potential. So it's just defense and goaltending for this team. And I think in a tough Eastern Conference playoff race, I don't think that they're going to be able to score enough goals to make it in. So I also have them at just outside.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect place for them. I think Sorokin carries them a little bit, honestly, to that position. But yeah, the division, let alone conference. Conference is just too tough for them this year.
Mm-hmm. And then that leads us right to the other New York team, which is definitely a playoff team, in the Rangers.
Yes, I think I had them second wild card.
Wild card, okay, interesting.
I would, although like thinking about it more, I would probably move them up to first wild card.
Okay.
Or yeah, first wild card at least. I just thought that they were really disappointing in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of soured my opinion on them, and also presumably losing Tarasenko and Kane.
That's right.
Even though they were rentals, it does kind of hurt. I don't know. Panarin hasn't been as good lately, and I don't know. All these factors kind of made me lean to put them in a wild card spot.
Yeah, I had them personally as third in the division, mostly because we were saying the Islanders don't have the star power to get them in, whereas that's all the Rangers have is like Fox, Shesterkin, Zibanejad, all those guys, and Panarin. So I think that's enough to get them into the third spot. But we could do third or wild card. Basically, we might as well just rope these two in together. Here is Pittsburgh. I think we have them both making the playoffs as well, right?
Yes. I would probably lean honestly to putting Rangers third seed, Pittsburgh first wild card.
That's what I was thinking too.
Even though I think adding Carlson was a great add, every single player on that team got a year younger, and the only player that doesn't, or a year older. God, yeah,
yeah, they didn't.
Yeah, they went back in time. They got a year older, including Carlson. The only one who didn't was Jake Gensel, and I mean to say that he isn't really going to be that impacted. He's younger. A year doesn't really matter too much. I'm worried that it's going to start impacting Crosby, Malk, and Letang a little bit more, which makes me a little bit more tentative. But I think adding Carlson makes me comfortable that they're probably going to make it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that addition, like without that addition, I would have had them outside of the playoffs, but Carlson,
Same.
even if he has like a 30-point drop-off from last season, that's still adding a 70-point defenseman, which is amazing. So he's going to help them score enough goals to make the playoffs. From there, I think they're probably a first-round exit or second-round exit. I don't expect much of them in the playoffs just because it's kind of like all offense, not much defense, and questionable goaltending for them. So wild card for Pittsburgh. I'm glad that Karlsson gets to play on a competitive team again, but I don't think he's going to win a cup with them, to be honest.
No, I don't think so either. I think they're just too far out of their window for that to be viable. But I mean, who knows? They make the playoffs. Karlsson turns it on again, like he did in Ottawa. Like who knows? But
It's possible.
we'll
He
see.
does have that X factor in him that he could just take over and win a couple series. We've seen him do it before. And like despite the fact that I don't really have them as a cup contender, I do think it was a good trade for Pittsburgh though, just because they didn't really give up anything worth any value except for that first round pick. And it's not like you're going to be selling off Crosby or Malkin or Letang anytime soon. Like those are guys who will probably just want to stay in Pittsburgh and end their careers there as a one team player. So even though you give up that first round pick, it's like, yeah, you might as well just give it up to have fun for 1 year with Karlsson and see what you can do trying to win the cup for a couple more years, even though I don't think they're quite that good.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it was the right move at the right time for Dubas. You push open that door to winning a cup slightly more by adding Karlsson. You have nothing to lose by doing it. And honestly, it just works, and I comfortably put them in the playoffs at this point, and I think having them first wildcard, Rangers first seed or third seed, I should say, is it's the right way to go, I think.
Did you see the rumors that Dubas was originally pursuing Karlsson while he was still with the Leafs?
I did, and
God.
they absolutely terrify me because like I have even trouble seeing him on Pittsburgh, like. The image of Karlsson talking to Jason Spezza made me cringe just a little.
Just because it had Penguins logos on it.
Just because it had Penguins logos. It would have been so much worse if it was Toronto. Like I would have had to actively cheer against Karlsson. I would have had to hope that he had an awful year if it was Toronto. I could be a little bit more comfortable on Pittsburgh being like, if he does well, whatever. I mean, Ottawa, Pittsburgh are kind of at different ends of their rebuild now, or of their team build now, so less fresh. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I can't bring myself to cheer against Karlsson, so I would have been devastated if he was on the Leafs, and I would have had to cheer against his success because I'm not rooting for the Leafs to be going deep in the playoffs. And I would like Karlsson to get a cup, even though I don't think it's going to happen on Pittsburgh. He will at least have opportunities. I think they will still be making the playoffs, so at least he doesn't have to play out the rest of his contract on a bottom feeder. But yeah, oh God, I'm so glad that they have Klingberg instead of Karlsson. It's a huge difference. Yeah.
Massive difference. I'd be much more bullish even on Toronto, who we'll get to later, if they had Karlsson. So it kind of worked out perfectly.
Yeah, and like even though I despise Pittsburgh normally, if they make the playoffs and Karlsson takes them on a run, I'll just be happy for Karlsson at that point. And like even though I always like to see new teams win the cup, at least it's Karlsson, a new guy taking them there. So
exactly, a new player deserves it.
So yeah, and since we are showing a little bit of our Ottawa bias here with that discussion, that leads us to the next team, which is the Sens. This is the big one for us. Do we have them in or out of the playoffs? I'll let you know that I have them in, but only in a cautiously optimistic sense.
I'm in the exact same boat. I have them second wild card right now, and it sucks because if they were in any other if they were in the other conference in either of the two divisions, I feel like it'd be a lock.
Yeah,
near lock for playoffs. But the freaking Atlantic, it's just
it's going to be a dogfight.
It's a dogfight. It's going to be a massacre between those teams. So I don't know. I feel like Ottawa added enough to break into that playoff spot. I think the Tarasenko addition was great. I think adding Kubalik in addition to Tarasenko basically negates any sort of a benefit that DeBrincat brought. I think you just completely replaced him as a player. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty confident, pretty bullish on what they've done in the offseason. That kind of brings them up to the next round.
Yep, you're 100% right that even though DeBrincat is gone, you replace his production with Tarasenko and Kubalik, they should already score as much as he did, if not more. And then there's also the factor that Josh Norris didn't play the entire season last year. So getting even like 50 games out of him this season would be great. Like, even if he's not back to like a 40-goal pace, that's still a good amount of offense added, even if he has a down year for his standards. So the Sens already scored enough goals that they could have made the playoffs last year, and it was just defense and goaltending that was the letdown, and maybe coaching. So the offense, in my mind, is going to be as good, if not better, than last year. Defense should be better with a full year of Chychrun. And then goaltending, I don't know, but I would like to think that Korpisalo will be better than Cam Talbot was.
I would have to think so. And I mean, I think it would have been better to give Korpisalo a shorter term in the long run. But I think with the double knee injury to Forsberg, you kind of had to get some insurance.
Yeah,
and I feel
they
like
had to get someone.
Exactly. Like, I felt really bad for Sogard last season. He did not deserve what happened. And he was good and bad. So I think he just needs more time, more seasoning, as they say in the AHL. So I think the addition of the goalie will hopefully stabilize the team. Korpisalo should help a little bit in that regard. The only thing is DJ Smith has the shortest leash in the NHL. I feel confident in saying if he doesn't have a positive record after like 12, 13 games, he has to be gone.
For sure. They have the Sweden trip halfway through November, and if the team isn't at least like 3 games above 500 before they go to Sweden, I don't want him going to Sweden. Get someone else in there.
I agree wholeheartedly. He needs to show an ability to kind of adapt to the struggles of the league, what the league throws at him, because routinely defensive systems have been a problem. And the excuse always was, well, you didn't have a great decor. You didn't have an amazing goaltender. Your forwards weren't developed enough to back check. And now you don't have a single excuse. It's all up to your coaching.
Yep, exactly. And to throw it back to the tier list now, we were both kind of thinking Ottawa in the wild card, but I was just looking at it now, like, we don't have any of the Atlantic teams in the playoffs right now except for Boston, which we had at wild card. Do you think the Sens will finish ahead of Boston?
I think that's tough. I think that's tough. My heart wants to say yes.
Yeah.
My brain thinks logically about a team that just had 64, 65 wins, right? I don't know. It's tough. I feel like maybe Boston will be better, but it's teetering on an edge.
I think they'll be very close. So I guess just for the sake of how we already have the tier list, like, I mean, I feel like it's being way too optimistic to put Ottawa up at the 3rd seed, but that because we have Pittsburgh in wild card. So I feel like I'm going to put Ottawa 2nd wild card and then move Boston up to 3rd seed. Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Because it'll be so close in between them.
I think that's more representative of what could actually happen if I'm trying to make an accurate a prediction while ignoring my feelings about the Sens. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and also I think this is skipping ahead a little bit, but just because we're on the topic of the Atlantic Division, we can wrap it up with that division with Toronto and Tampa who are left. Who do you think is going to win the division between those two?
I picked Tampa to win the division.
Okay.
I think the Leafs got worse over the course of the offseason.
That's a hot take.
I like some of their additions. I think Bertuzzi is good. Domi, another good depth piece. I think that'll help shore up the top 6 a little bit. I think, however, giving Camp the deal that they did was really stupid. I think that Klingberg is kind of done as like a pairing defenseman. Muzzin, of course, is not going to play a single game. They re-signed Samsonov, which is good, but they just signed, I think, Martin Jones to be like their 3rd goalie with Woll. If something happens to Samsonov, that's not good. I know Jones had a little bit more of a bounce back year last year, but I still don't trust it. I think their defense is much worse. And honestly, I kind of think, like, why did you even trade Sandin? Like, Sandin and Klingberg at this point for me are like almost neck and neck in terms of what they bring. You could maybe even make an argument that Sandin is better defensively.
Honestly,
obviously, like Yeah, you have to look into it. But I really think that the main thing with Toronto is that they got worse, and that will put them behind of Tampa, who also got a little worse. But I feel like their core players are still so good that that's going to propel them to the top.
So I basically agree with everything you said. It kind of applies to both teams, though, where their top players will propel them to the top, and then it's the depth that's the question marks, right? So
Right.
I do think both teams got worse, but I don't know if I think that Toronto got worse enough that I have them like lower than first in the division. Like, you are right that the defense is worse, and it is weird to me as well that they didn't just keep Rasmus Sandin. Obviously, that was a Dubas move before he left, but could have just kept him. And then if you had him in instead of Klingberg, I would like that better for their decor. Funny enough, it's it's just some kind of weird moves in Toronto. Like, you bring in Ryan Reeves on a 3-year deal. He'll be good on the locker room, but I don't think he's going to have that much of an impact on the ice.
That's the one I forgot about. That one was also questionable.
Max Domi is really hit and miss. Like, he was good on a bottom feeder in Chicago. He was good when Carolina traded for him at the deadline a couple years ago, but he was pure ass in Columbus. So I can't just say without a doubt that he's going to be like a 50, 60 point guy again on Toronto. And then Bertuzzi is good. You can't argue against the Tyler Bertuzzi edition, but it's a weird setup for Toronto where they just kind of shuffled the deck chairs of all their depth players. And I think I still have them at first in the division just because I was really not impressed with Tampa in the playoff series against them last year, where it felt like Tampa easily could have won that series and just kind of gave it away to them. And like, Vasilevsky looked totally cooked in that series. We know that
He did.
we know that he's the best goalie of the last decade, so he should bounce back, probably have a good regular season again, but I just feel like Tampa is getting to the point where it's going to start falling off for them. Not quite so much this year, but I think that I have Toronto ahead of them because I think Tampa is going to keep backsliding just very slowly.
I agree. I do wonder though if this is like their last hurrah year. They
Could
got
be.
out of the first round really early. That was the first time in like 3 years that they didn't play until like April. Um, I I really or June even or close to May. I wonder if that rest will kind of let them rebound. And I I would say I value defense a little bit more than
Mm-hmm.
forward at this stage. I think Tampa's defense is miles better than Toronto's. So in my view, that puts them ahead and
Okay.
gives them division. I think it's close. I know that I like said a lot of bad stuff about Toronto, but I think it is close. I think it could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
Tampa is just a little bit more, just gives me a little bit more of a nudge towards feeling that they could win.
Yeah, I guess it's easier to go with the team that has won cups. That's fair. Kind of like how before I was saying, how am I going to put Edmonton ahead of Vegas? Like,
Yeah, I mean, like Lightning are further along in their window, but I understand that sentiment. I kind of agree.
so yeah, I still think both teams are slightly worse than last year, but I'm going to concede to you for the sake of this tier list. I'm going to put the Leafs in second, and we'll put Tampa in first. But
Oh, thank you, Mon.
similar to how we were saying like Boston and Ottawa for third and fourth in that division, it will be very close, I think.
Yes, yes, I agree. Actually, I think it'll be very close.
So then at this point in the tier list, we have one playoff spot left in the West. I figure we should just kind of like discard some of the other teams here for who are not even going to get close, like the Flyers. Not even close, and what the hell are we even going to say about the Flyers, really?
I think one of the worst decors in the last decade on that team.
Oh my
I do
god.
think they have promise in the future. I thought their prospect pick this year, Mitrikov,
Yeah,
very
Mitchell will
good.
be good.
And I think they have some good forwards. I think Travis Konechny is exceptional. Will he stay? That's a big question. But yeah, I think that one's pretty easy. Not even close.
I'm very excited to see the Mark Stahl and Rasmus Ristolainen pairing with Cal Peterson in net.
That's going to be absolute fire. That's just going to be elite. It's going to be perfect comedy television. They're going to
Yep.
broadcast those games on Comedy Central.
They're gonna get the Comedy Central TV deal. Oh my god,
Exactly.
that's some amazing tank building by Danny Briere. They're assembling those guys all together.
Thank God they got rid of Chuck Fletcher. That was
Yep.
crazy. Like, he was so bad. At least they kind of can be optimistic that he's not there anymore.
But yeah, this will be a pure tank year for the Flyers. Honestly, it's between them and the Sharks for like last in the entire league in my mind, and maybe Chicago as well. But at least they have the Bedard bump, whereas these other two teams, like the Sharks, will have a couple young guys coming up. Maybe Will Smith will make the team, but for the Flyers, we know Mitchkov is not coming over yet. So
No.
and then the Sharks, like, what are we really going to say about them? Carlson's gone. He was the only thing worth watching on their team last season. And Timo Meier, he was there too, already shipped out at the deadline. And just bring in some bums like Mike Hoffman to play out the year. I mean, they got, like, some decent players like Anthony Duclair, but he's going to be the only guy scoring any goals with Logan Couture and Thomas Hertl.
He's absolutely like a supporting piece to this team.
But he'll be on the first line.
Yeah, which is funny. And I mean, they're going to be playing Mark-Edward Vlasic still.
Oh.
So I think that almost ensures a not even close position.
Okay, wait, you said the Flyers would be the worst D-core in the league, but we do also have to say the Sharks D-core of Vlasic, Ferraro, Ruta, Simic, Benning, and Nizov.
You know what? That's a competition.
Might be
right
worse.
there.
Might be worse.
It could be worse with that in Philly.
Like,
I think
Travis Sanheim is better than all of those guys.
that's true.
By a little bit, at least. Not that he's, like, elite or anything. Maybe Mario Ferraro is, like, close to him, but it's pretty rough for both of those teams in the D-core.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very easy to place those teams right off the back. Hopefully bright futures, but, wait and see.
And then, I guess, since we're just going for that last Western wildcard spot, we'll just, I think we'll dump the Capitals as the last Eastern team here as just outside, right?
Yes, I feel similarly. I feel like it's rough because I feel like the Capitals want to start like a mini rebuild / retool, but they're more hesitant because of the Ovi record. And
Yep.
I feel like for now, that's going to mean that they don't really do a lot. They're just going to be kind of average, just so that they can put good players with Ovi, get them to score a couple goals, try to break that record. That's their legacy at this point.
Yeah, it's not a team where you go all in, like, with rentals at the deadline if you're close. It's just like, but it's also not a team where you sell anyone off, because it's similar to Pittsburgh. I don't think you want to be trading away Backstrom and Ovi as rentals. I think those are the type of guys that you just keep until they retire.
I agree. Yeah, like definitely Ovi. Absolutely.
So it's a tough spot for them to be in. I think they'll be on the lower end of just outside. I think they're going to be, like, cleanly outside of the playoffs.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
So then for that last Western wildcard spot, Seattle, St. Louis, Vancouver, and Winnipeg. We'll put it this way. Who should we eliminate first?
I feel like Vancouver should get eliminated.
Yeah, I agree.
I am so frustrated with Vancouver just because, like, their owner is awful. And, I mean, I have personal experience with this. I had to deal with Eugene Melnyk.
Yeah, this guy is the new Melnyk.
He's the new Melnyk. The way the team is built is so confusing to me. It is routinely like, let's get our young players in, let's get them experience, let's get them to get going. And then they just get, like, a bunch of veterans. And then fill that throughout their lineup. Those veterans underperform. They get traded away. And then the cycle just continuously repeats. Like, why did they sign what's his name? Freaking center. Do you remember, Maude?
Teddy Bluger?
No, 8x8. It was
JT Miller. Yeah,
there we go. Yeah, JT Miller.
Yeah, why keep him? There was offers, I think, from the Penguins, right?
Yes, there was offers from the Penguins. And I mean, maybe they weren't good enough, but why didn't you just trade him and sign Bo Horvat? Like, he was
exactly.
Your captain. Why didn't you do that?
It was a strange decision. I still don't understand that to this day.
Yeah, like, it feels to me like Pedersen and Hughes are just stuck on an island on that team. A little bit Demko too. So I don't know. That the future with that team just seems to me like just average, unless they can pull something off.
Yeah, Demko's been up and down, so will he return to elite form? We don't know. The Ekman Larson buyout, I mean, yeah, keeping him at 8 million would have been bad, but you didn't do anything good with those cap savings at all. You signed Ian Cole and Carson Soucy, which combines for over 6 million, and it's like that's what you decided to replace Ekman Larson with. Like, you may as well have just kept him and bought him out a couple of years later so that the buyout would be less, like, wouldn't last as long for the cap penalties.
Yeah.
But it's not a team that's any better than last year. I wouldn't say that they're significantly worse, but they're definitely in the just outside tier and not particularly close for me. But not
Yeah,
quite,
I
not
agree.
quite in the bottom tier though, because they still.
No,
I still love I love Pedersen and Hughes, and Kuzmenko was amazing as a rookie last year. So they have the talent, but like you said, the way the roster is put together is just really weird.
it's baffling.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, maybe they could surprise, but I feel pretty confident in just them being kind of average. Not bad enough to be in the bottom tier, not good enough to be in a wild card spot.
And then next, I think I want to eliminate St. Louis.
Yeah, I actually had St. Louis on my on a wild card position, in a wild card position on my ranking, but I was thinking about it more. We've been talking more, and I feel pretty comfortable dropping them in the just outside territory. I feel like Binghamton is a head case. I don't think he guarantees you success. Getting Kevin Hayes, I thought was really good, but losing players like Tarasenko obviously hurts. Um, Again, just not good enough to push into that wild card position with the current makeup.
Yeah, since I convinced you to let me put Calgary in as the second wild card, St. Louis had to get bumped because I wouldn't put them as the first wild card. If anything, they would be sneaking in as the second one. And yeah, the main reason for me is Binnington. I think this guy is just completely washed. I don't think he's going to regain elite form. Maybe he can get back to average form because he was even worse than average last season. He's one of the worst goalies in the entire league who played like a significant amount of games. So unless Joel Hofer is going to become a starting goalie like immediately, it's not looking good for them. That's probably one of the worst tandems in the league for goalies. No,
At this point,
no disrespect to Joel Hofer because he's a rookie, but unproven, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. And goalies are voodoo. Like, you can have the best pedigree, you could be renowned throughout the NHL for what you're going to do, and they just won't show up. It's impossible to predict. So I feel like basing any prediction of success off of a rookie goalie is pretty ignorant. So I have to put them outside.
Yeah, and like on offense, Tarasenko and O'Reilly gone. Those were the guys who drove the offense for like 5 years since they got O'Reilly. And
Yeah.
last season, like Kyrou and Thomas, they're good, but they didn't really show that they could like totally replace the production of Tarasenko and O'Reilly since those guys started producing less, right? Thomas and Kyrou, they did good, but it's like I don't know if they're the type of guys who can carry the team on their own. They might need like another superstar to play with them, really, to really carry things. So I think St. Louis is close, but there's some missing pieces for sure.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think it's going to be interesting where they end up, but I'm not expecting too much.
So that leaves us with Winnipeg and Seattle for that wildcard spot. And I'm leaning Seattle. I assume you are too, although you are a Winnipeg fan. So what do you think? Let me know.
Yeah, let's go Winnipeg. Second team. Winnipeg eliminated.
Yeah, they're out of here.
It's not hard. I think they're in the just outside tier. I don't think they're in the not even close tier. But that team went through a lot this season. You're most likely losing Connor Hellebuck. You already lost Blake Wheeler. You are trying to replace those big holes with Perfetti, which, I mean, I think he will be good. I have high hopes. But there just isn't enough depth there. I mean, I do really like the Dubois trade. I think getting Velarde was great. Kapari, I think, will be a good bottom six option. But I don't know. This team is just kind of rough to watch at times because they don't have enough of what it takes to make it to the playoffs. I feel like they don't have enough premium players. Don't really have enough depth. Apparently the dressing room was absolutely dysfunctional as hell. And I wish they could stay in there, but I feel like with everything happening on the outside, with a bunch of players wanting to leave, this is the time where we start to see a little bit of the fall off of the Winnipeg Jets.
Yep, I agree with you. It's funny. I really like the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. I think the Jets made out very well in that trade, but it didn't make them a better team. It's like Iafallo is good, but he's probably a guy that you play for a couple of years and then flip him when he's going to be a UFA, like at the deadline, and then Villardi is the main piece there, who should be really good, but he's not going to replace Dubois like right away. He's going to be like a little bit worse on paper. So they improved the depth a little bit, but lost the high end talent of Dubois. And just the main thing for me is they're probably going to be about the same as last year, except minus Dubois and Wheeler, and then these other guys coming in. It's probably going to be about the same in terms of like goal scoring. And you have Scheifele, who's a UFA coming up, and Hellebuck, who's a UFA coming up. So I think they're going to be on the bubble the whole season, kind of in, kind of out. But I highly doubt that either of those players are going to want to extend, because it looks like Winnipeg is kind of looking for a rebuild soon if they're not going to want to stay. Like, because even if they do stay, like, they need more. They need more elite talent. And
that's impossible to get, especially in Winnipeg.
You have to draft it, so it's kind of the team where for a rebuild you have to bottom out and get those top picks. So I think Winnipeg's going to be hanging around the wild card spot for most of the season, even though you think they're going to be more like not even close. But I think what will happen is Scheifele and Hellebuck gone at the deadline, if not before the beginning of the season, because there is still more time in the offseason. They'll be gone. And then Winnipeg has the fall off at the end of the season, and they finish kind of like between 5th and 10th last.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate prediction. I think it's kind of the beginning of the end for that team, and I'm kind of hoping that they start like a rebuild / retool sooner rather than later, so they could capitalize on Ehlers and Connor while they're still in like decent prime age.
Yeah.
But for all we know, they could get traded too, so we'll have to wait and see.
The worst possible thing for this team would be having a surprisingly good year and being in a playoff spot with Hellebuck and Scheifele on expiring deals, and then trying to go on a playoff run, probably flopping, and then those guys walk in UFA. So if I was a Jets fan, I would hope for them to miss the playoffs so that you can get good returns for these guys and try to retool.
Exactly. Like we kind of already saw what happened when Columbus did that, where they were kind of like a bubble team, but we're going to make the playoffs. And then they brought in Duchesne, Dzingel, really tried to load up, and it didn't work out. And then they lost all those players, which was kind of rough. So
So yeah, similar situation there, and that leaves us with the Seattle Kraken getting the first wild card in the West, which I think pretty easy decision. It's about the same team as it was last year, just like losing Daniel Sprong and Geeky, I guess. So everyone likes Seattle. Everyone was happy watching them last year, so I think that's a pretty easy choice for them to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I was really impressed with them, to be honest, because they don't really have any megastar talent. Like Bernier's might eventually work his way up into that conversation, but besides, like they basically made it with a bunch of like middling players that are usually just top 6 fodder, and they made it work. And those players performed, like they showed up. Like Vince Dunne's season was crazy. I never expected that out of him. And then players like Yanni Gord, just putting in the work, like they were really impressive.
Yeah, like I think Oliver Bjorkstrand will have a bit of a bounce back year. He started off really slow last year. He's a player that I really like. I think he could get back to scoring close to 30 goals. Matty Beniers is going to continue to improve. He's already basically a first-line center. And then I think Philip Grubauer as well. He's a bit of a hit-and-miss goalie, kind of up and down, but he had that down year last year, and I got to think that he won't be that bad again because we've seen him be good in the past. So I think Seattle will finish about the same as they did last season and have pretty good shot at things in the playoffs.
Yep, they're seemingly well coached. They have the right sort of roster. I like their makeup, so they could make some noise.
And there we have it. That's our full playoff tier list right there. What do you think about the final results?
I mean, I feel like there wasn't as much compromise as I was like necessarily expecting. I was wondering like how our views would line up, but it seems like we kind of agree on most things. And I mean, I feel like they're pretty good predictions for this point in the off season, at least. Of course, you have preseason training camp, and then you have the start of the season, which will change everything. And for all we know, we'll be absolute idiots. The table will be flipped next year.
Yep.
So, but I feel confident, and I don't think we had any outrageous hot takes either. So I think it's a pretty well-built list.
Yeah, I'm really excited to eventually look back on this, even like partway through the season next year, and see if there's like any teams that we have way off who are just way better or way worse than what we expect. Because you never know. There's some team will get decimated by injuries, or some team will have a rookie just go absolutely crazy and surprise everyone. So you never know. There's always something interesting happening in the NHL, which is the main subject of this podcast. Is we are going to be looking at the various stories throughout the league during the season. So I'm really excited to be doing more episodes with you in the future here. It's going to be a fun podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited to get started, to get into that. Obviously, we're going with a little bit of different format because it's off season. We don't have a ton of news, but we thought this was a good way to kind of build up our personalities here to show kind of how we think about the game to start off. So we might have another episode or two, a couple episodes before the start of the season, doing more of these fun little discussions. But once the season actually starts, that's when you can expect just full coverage of what's happening in the NHL. And you can come here to get all your weekly news.
Yes, we will have a few more off-season episodes, see what we can come up with, as news is a little bit slow in these dog days of the summer, but
trying times.
Once the season gets going, we will have a lot of stuff to talk about, so it's going to be real fun.
Yes. And to anyone who tuned in just for the first episode and made it this far, we thank you, of course. Yes. New podcasts are really hard to build up from the ground up. And of course, if you have any feedback, whether it be bad or good, we'd love to hear it. You can find us on Twitter, as I said before, at the Extra Attackers handle. And we also will be posting this to YouTube if you're listening to this on any streaming service. So if you want to comment there, tell us what we could do better, what we did well, that would be great as well.
Yes, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and maybe more in the future. If there's any streaming services that you use that are not those ones and you want to hear our show on there, let us know.
Yes, that'd be good too.
All right, so that about does it for the first episode of Extra Attackers, the big prediction episode. I can't wait to see how these turn out, and excited for many more episodes in the future.
Yes, as am I. And anyone who watches this should be excited to make fun of us when we're wrong in 2 months. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. If you think our predictions are terrible, you can bookmark this video and then come yell at us in 2 months and completely roast us.
Well, we'll take it well. We've been wrong before.
Yeah. Oh, we've been very wrong. We thought
wrong.
We thought Boston would miss the playoffs last year. So
yeah, that was my pick. So it shows how much I know.
All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching or listening. Have a good day.
Take care.